Any health-related information on the following show provides general information only. Content presented on any show by any host or guest should not be substituted for a doctor's advice. Always consult your physician before beginning any new diet, exercise, or treatment program.
Hello, welcome to Five to Thrive Live, a podcast about thriving for those who have been affected by cancer or chronic disease. I'm Dr. Lisa Schuler, and I co-host with my good friend Carolyn Gazella. You can find all of our past shows on any major podcast outlet and a schedule on our website, which is ithriveplan.com. So I'm very excited for this show. I will be talking with Dr. Michelle Qaqundah. And we're going to be talking about the Mediterranean diet, which is, I think, something that people might sort of feel like, yeah, I know all about that. But in fact, the research on this way of eating is quite impressive. And the nuances of the diet are also somewhat important when we want to achieve those health benefits. So we're going to hear more about that. Dr. Michelle Qaqundah is a naturopathic doctor and a fellow of the American Board of Naturopathic Oncology. And she's an Italian-trained chef. She currently practices in Lucca, Italy. She's the founder of Mediterranean Life, LLC, which offers educational events and wellness retreats in Tuscany, which are focused on the Mediterranean diet and lifestyle. And you can learn more at mediterraneanliferetreats.com. She is also educated regarding the Mediterranean diet and lifestyle through international lecturing, medical journal articles, and textbook chapters. She's the past director of naturopathic medicine at Cancer Treatment Centers of America and the past president of the Oncology Association of Naturopathic Physicians. She is passionate about health and wellness and strives to improve as many lives as possible through direct patient care and education. And before we start talking with Dr. Qaqundah, I want to thank our sponsors. First, Cetria, a patented form of glutathione clinically proven to raise blood glutathione levels. Glutathione is the master antioxidant and the body's primary defense against damaging free radicals. And you can learn more at cetriaglutathione.com. We also thank Cognizin Citicoline, which keeps your brain going on all cylinders. So if you want to enhance your brain function, memory, focus, and attention, look for Cognizin on the label or go to cognizin.com for more information. We also thank ProThrivers Wellness Supplements, including ProThrivers Wellness Brain, which includes Cognizin, as well as some other brain-supporting nutrients and herbs. And you can find ProThrivers Wellness Brain online at pureformulas.com. You can also look for ProThrivers Wellness Sleep while you're there, a supplement which combines higher dose melatonin and other sleep-supporting natural ingredients, specifically designed for thrivers. And finally, Dr. Ohhira's Probiotics, a best-selling probiotic for over 30 years with 12 probiotic strains, which are shelf-stable without refrigeration due to their unique 3-year fermentation process. And you can learn more at drohhiraprobiotics.com. And with that, hello, Michelle. Welcome to Five to Thrive Live.
Hi, Lise. Thanks for having me on your show.
Absolutely. Well, we go way back, and it's nice to reconnect, albeit I would much prefer to do this in Italy, I think. I have to admit, I'm a bit jealous. But hey, this is this, and you live in like one of the prime regions for the Mediterranean diet. So tell us what it's like. First of all, to live in Italy, and second, what's it like to be in the birthplace, really, of the Mediterranean diet?
Well, I have really enjoyed living here. It's been more than 15 years now, and I've really enjoyed the culture and, of course, the foods here. The people are very welcoming, and it's a culture that I very much enjoy.
Nice. Okay, so let's get right to it. What is the Mediterranean diet? What are the key attributes?
Yeah, well, the Mediterranean diet is more, is not quite a diet. It's more a style of eating that prioritizes healthy foods. specifically those foods based on the traditional foods of the people who live around the Mediterranean Sea. It's rich in unprocessed plant foods, and that is the bulk of the diet. So that includes foods such as whole grains, such as brown rice or farro, lots of vegetables and fruits, legumes such as beans or lentils, nuts and seeds, extra virgin olive oil, and it also includes a lot of fish in the diet.
Yeah, all sounds good, good tasting and good for you. So, you mentioned nuts and seeds, and those are important for fiber and minerals and all of that, but really have a key component, which is the fats. And speaking of fats, olive oil is, I think, probably one of the most important components of the Mediterranean diet. So, what do you think about olive oil? Why is it important? And also, just give people a little advice about how to buy good quality olive oil after you talk about its benefits.
Yes, okay. Well, I could sing an ode to extra virgin olive oil. We grow we have an olive grove, and we pick our olives every year and take them to the mill. So I feel very strongly about it, but not just because I have this personal connection with the olive oil, but also because it really is considered one of the most important aspects of the Mediterranean diet. And a lot of people attribute a lot of the health benefits of the Mediterranean diet to this special ingredient. Extra virgin olive oil is full of healthy fats, so it is one of the healthy fats. It's primarily monounsaturated fats, such as oleic acid, which has a ton of evidence for cardiovascular health and for other chronic disease. But it's also very rich in tocopherols, carotenoids, and there are as many as 36 distinct polyphenols, which have antioxidant as well as anti-inflammatory actions. The main polyphenols that are the main ones that we know about the extra virgin olive oil and that are most studied are oleuropein and hydroxytyrosol, and they have been shown to have a lot of health benefits specific to chronic disease. So they contribute to downregulation of COX-2 expression, which helps to lower inflammation. They help lower NF-kappa B activation, which regulates immune responses and cell growth. And it also reduces intracellular oxidation levels. So we know that it's just packed with these nutrients that have a lot of health benefits to us, and is also very delicious.
Yeah. So, it's confusing over here in the United States because you go into the store and there's all sorts of extra virgin olive oils available, but some of them are perhaps not very good quality because there's a lot of adulteration of olive oil on the market. So, do you have any tips for people when they're looking for olive oil?
Yes, and that is a really good point, Lise. There is a lot of fraud, unfortunately, in the industry. And so it's important, if it's possible, to know your source and go with people that you trust. There are some certifications out there, some international ones, some specific to certain regions, like California has their own certification. But you really do want to be going for, number one, looking that it does say extra virgin olive oil. And the reason for that is because the extra virgin olive oil is going to be the highest in the polyphenols. This is where they take the olives, they crush them, they press them, and that liquid that comes out, it's centrifuged to remove the water from the oil, and that is what you're getting. It's basically olive juice.
Mm-hmm.
So it's the most unprocessed form of the olive oil, and it's the highest in the polyphenols. The rest of the olive oils are produced from that dry pumice that's left over, and so generally they're using solvents to extract that. So you're losing a lot of the health benefits that way. What you want to do when you are looking at olive oils is you want to pour a little bit in a cup, take a look at the color before you do anything, and it should be a very dark yellow or even a greenish color. It should not be very, very clear or very light colored. So if you're seeing a straw color, that is most likely not a good quality extra virgin olive oil. So you want it to have a darker color. And it should have. So then after you pour, you look at the color, hold your hand, into the cup in your hand and kind of warm it up, swirl it around a little bit, put a little in your mouth, and you should taste a little bitter flavor. And that bitter flavor is actually from the polyphenols. And so if you feel the taste in your mouth as bitter or maybe even a little spicy, a little burning, almost peppery a sensation in your mouth, that's going to be a high quality extra virgin olive oil. And another thing that you could consider is, if you're not sure about your sources of extra virgin olive oil, another way of getting great quality extra virgin olive oil in your diet is to incorporate olives regularly into your diet. They are a little bit higher in salt, and so you may want to rinse them beforehand, but that's going to be the most fresh, and you can't argue with the quality of the olive oil when it's coming directly from the olives as well.
Absolutely, so true. Yeah, and I would just add that olive oil is really good to eat just straight out of the spoon as almost like a daily health supplement. That's what I do, and I cook with it. And you can cook with it as up to its smoke point, so it's actually works for most foods that we cook. And you can add it to foods that you're eating. It's actually not too hard to eat a lot of olive oil.
And, that's absolutely true. And I think that a lot of people, when I'm educating them about olive oil, they're surprised to hear that most Italians, olive oil is is basically maybe the only oil that they have in their house. We cook with olive oil, and some people say, no, you can't cook with olive oil because of the smoke point. But the smoke point is 200 degrees Celsius. That's 390 degrees Fahrenheit. That's pretty high. So for most of your cooking, low heat, medium heat, basically anything but frying, you can use extra virgin olive oil for cooking. And then, of course, if you have a special one, save that one to drizzle over the foods after they're cooked to retain as much of the polyphenols as possible. But there have even been studies where they have heated extra virgin olive oil to 180 degrees Celsius, and which is about 350, I think, Fahrenheit, and have found that the anti-inflammatory effects that they were studying in this group of subjects, they still had the anti-inflammatory effects in their bodies. So we know that it is still beneficial, even if it is cooked with.
Yeah, great. Okay, well, we could talk about olive oil all show, but let's move on. Any other key foods that you feel are essential to a Mediterranean style of eating and living?
Yes, I think the star of the show, other than extra virgin olive oil, are the fruits and vegetables. Vegetables are the most important component of the Mediterranean diet because they're the most dense in micronutrients. Of all the foods that we consume, fruits and vegetables have the most vitamins and other beneficial phytochemicals, such as polyphenols, antioxidants, as well as fiber. So, the fruits and vegetables are a star, should be the star of your plate, and all of these nutrients that we find in the most dense form in these foods are playing a really important role in reducing inflammation and other preventative effects for various chronic disease, including cancer and cardiovascular disease. One vegetable or fruit, I guess, that I'd like to kind of highlight is the mighty tomato. It seems like a simple piece of produce, but I really do feel that the tomato-based sauces, which is one of the important components of the Mediterranean diet when you look at the specific goals that we want to follow when we're following that style of eating, those tomato-based sauces are, together with extra virgin olive oil, I think one of the most important parts of the Mediterranean diet. Tomatoes are very rich in lycopene, which has the highest antioxidant potential among all the carotenoids. And it's also one of the most widely investigated carotenoids for cancer and cardiovascular disease. So not only is it a powerful antioxidant, but it also has anti-inflammatory and as well as insulin sensitizing actions. But the thing about tomatoes is that those carotenoids, that lycopene, is fat soluble. So it's important that your tomatoes, and really all of your carotenoids, so anything with that orange-red color to it, is cooked it's better to eat them cooked. It's great to eat them raw, and that's fine too. But for incorporating it regularly into your diet, we recommend to be cooking it with some fat, and having those tomato-based sauces as part of a regular part of your diet. Cooking the tomatoes in fat aids in the absorption across the gut wall by incorporating that lycopene into these little lipid micelles, so that it's more easily absorbed, making it fat soluble. And it doesn't really matter which oil that you use. Of course, there are studies specifically with extra virgin olive oil, and it did show that it enhanced the bioavailability even more than other fats. And of course, you're going to get all those polyphenols in that sauce as well. But the most important thing is to cook it with enough fat and to cook it long enough so that fat turns red, so you know that you'll be absorbing that lycopene to the best of its ability.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sounds yummy. Okay, so there are a lot of, there's a voluminous body of research on the Mediterranean diet. Maybe just give us a couple of key study findings that you really think about most, and sort of to illustrate the impact or the power of the Mediterranean diet, way of being, living, etc., on your health.
Yeah, there is a ton of research on the Mediterranean diet. It was named the best diet overall by U.S. News and World Report for the 8th year in a row this year due to its evidence-based effectiveness. There are huge studies incorporating millions and millions of people. I think the concept of the Mediterranean diet first emerged in the 1960s when the results of the 7 countries study came out. And this was looking at the traditional eating patterns among 7 different countries. And they looked at that for 25 years. And that's when they kind of first discovered that this dietary pattern from the Mediterranean was associated with better health outcomes, lower rates of coronary heart disease, mortality, and all-cause mortality. When this study came out, the idea of the Mediterranean diet was, the numbers were great. And so all of these big observational studies were underway, many large-scale studies that all kind of pointed their finger in the same direction, showing that it was very effective in primary and secondary prevention of cardiovascular diseases, neurodegenerative diseases, type 2 diabetes, and cancer. And so this led to, what do we like to see with studies? We like to see clinical studies. So once we had all of these robust and large observational studies, this led to the first large clinical study of the Mediterranean diet, and that was the PREDIMED study.
Right. Now, the PREDIMED study was still to this day remains kind of a keystone in the clinical trial data. What were the main, kind of give us an idea of how many people were involved and what was the main conclusion of this study?
Yeah, it's true. We're still publishing analysis of the data from that study. It was a very big study. It really caught the headlines. They followed almost 7,500 participants, and this was a parallel group, randomized, multi-center, controlled 5-year trial. And it was aimed specifically at assessing the effects of the Mediterranean diet in primary prevention of cardiovascular disease. That was its goal. And so there were 3 groups to this study. There was either a low-fat diet, a Mediterranean diet with added nuts, or a Mediterranean diet with added olive oil. And they found what they were looking for, that the cardiovascular disease was greatly reduced. The risk of combined heart attack, stroke, and death from cardiovascular disease compared to the low-fat study was reduced by about 30% in both of the Mediterranean diet groups combined. They found specifically that there was decreases in cardiovascular risk factors such as blood glucose, blood pressure, LDL cholesterol, and C-reactive protein. They also found that there was a 52% reduced risk of developing type 2 diabetes.
Mm-hmm.
Excuse me.
No worries. Let you catch your breath for a second there. And I just want to comment as you're catching your breath that the three groups are really important because the low-fat diet was at the time considered to be the best way to reduce your risk of heart disease. But as we have since discovered, a low-fat diet sometimes becomes very carbohydrate heavy and not necessarily healthy carbohydrates, like a lot of simple carbohydrates, and is actually now considered to be somewhat pro-inflammatory and pro-diabetic because it increases insulin resistance and can even increase blood sugar levels. So that was another sort of secondary track from this study. But back to the Mediterranean component.
Yeah, that's a good point. They had another little surprise with this predicament. Excuse me. We are in full spring here, and the pollens have been wreaking havoc with my allergies.
Yeah, gotcha.
So, as they continued to evaluate the data from the Predimed study, they found that there was also, they were looking at cardiovascular disease, but they found that in addition to helping with cardiovascular disease, they found a 68% reduced risk of developing breast cancer in the Mediterranean diet with extra virgin olive oil versus the low-fat diet group. And for both med diet groups combined, there was about a 51% decreased risk.
Yeah, I mean, those numbers are really astounding. You know, if there was a drug that was out that was available for that kind of thing, that would be a best-selling drug. But I think that all those findings in just 5 years, mind you, from a diet is pretty amazing.
That's true. This data on the breast cancer was published in JAMA, the Journal of the American Medical Association, and their conclusion was that this is the first randomized trial finding an effect of a long-term dietary intervention on breast cancer incidence. I think that was a pretty strong conclusion there on their part.
Absolutely, and it is still the diet that I recommend first and foremost for my patients with a history of breast cancer. So I want to just challenge you a little bit in our few minutes remaining. You mentioned earlier that it's not just a diet, it's really a lifestyle. And I think that's a very important point. And I don't want that to go uncommented on because the Mediterranean way of living has a lot of other components that contribute really well, or importantly, I should say, to the benefits. Now, this Predimed study didn't necessarily include all of that, but can you just speak a little bit about the Mediterranean lifestyle?
Absolutely. And I do think that the diet does go hand in hand with the lifestyle. There some people, there are studies showing that even just the diet itself, not in the Mediterranean, studies in the States still show those good health benefits. So it can be separated, and we do know just the diet itself is very effective. But I do feel, having lived here and experienced the lifestyle, that it is very beneficial for a sense of well-being. And actually, in the PredMed study, you mentioned that they didn't really look at that, but they did actually recommend to the participants that they eat their meals seated at the table for at least 20 minutes. And I think that is something that is so important, is for us to remember that food is a pleasure, one of the joys of our life, and it should be that. And so that when we are enjoying our meals, that we take a moment, we make it a sacred event in our day, that we check our responsibilities and our worries at the door, and we sit down either in peace or in companionship with people around us to sit down and enjoy our meal and give ourselves that pause in the day to relax and not think of anything else.
Absolutely. Well, gosh, that's a fantastic and important thought. I mean, I think we're fast approaching a time when I think we're going to recognize just how critical stress and the busyness of our lives underlies so much of our ill health. And this is a beautiful way to combine good food with relaxation and just mindfulness. So, any final thoughts that you would like to leave with our listeners?
Yes, I think that there is, um, you know, it is very easy. It's very easy to incorporate the Mediterranean diet, this way of eating, into our lives. And I really encourage people to find ways to just start by adding foods into their diet rather than worrying about what foods am I not supposed to eat, really focusing more on which foods can I incorporate that are going to increase the nutrients of the food that I ate today.
Mhm.
Start by introducing one at a time. 1 week, introduce um, complex carbohydrates, replacing your simple carbs with complex carbs. Um, Little simple steps like that. Replace all the oils in your house with extra virgin olive oil if you're able to do that, except for maybe keep your avocado oil for frying if you do that sometimes. But and also I want to say just think about not only adding foods into your diet, but adding to your foods. So if you're making a pot of rice, use that as an opportunity for increasing more nutrients in your diet by adding to that. So adding some tomato concentrate with some extra virgin olive oil, maybe a garlic clove. One thing I like to add to foods that really, now you guys will like this, it's a great way of packing in a bunch more phytochemicals and antioxidants and flavor, is to add herbs. Anything that you've cooked, when it's finished cooking and you're about to serve it, go to your herb garden and grab a handful of any of your favorite herbs or all of them, chop them up roughly and mix them into the foods. Or if you don't have an herb garden, dried herbs work just fine too. Adding in a little extra phytochemicals into your meal. So always think about just adding. Don't worry so much about taking away.
Yeah, great advice. Well, Dr. Dr. Qaqundah, thank you for joining us tonight. It's been really a good show and really just wonderful to hear your passion for the Mediterranean diet. And I'm so glad that you're doing all you can to educate people about it. How do people find out more about you and your wellness retreats?
They can go to our website at www.mediterraneanliferetreats.com, or they can find us on Facebook at Mediterranean Life Retreats.
Fantastic. Well, that wraps up this episode of Five Drive Live. We thank our sponsors, Cetriaglutathione, the superior anti-glutathione to support liver and immune health, Cognizin Citicoline to help enhance memory, focus, and attention, Dr. Ohhira's Probiotics, award-winning pre- and probiotic formulas, and Pro Thrivers Wellness Supplements designed specifically for thrivers. Thank you for joining us. May you experience joy, laughter, and love. It's time to thrive, everyone.